Vamos a... Está bien. Well, good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to the closing press conference for the 55th General Assembly of the Organization of American States. We have with us the Foreign Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Mr. E.P. Chet Green, the OAS Secretary General, Mr. Albert Ramdin, Ambassador Albert Ramdin, and the Assistant Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Ambassador Nestor Mendez. Once again, this press conference will be conducted in English. For those present in the room, interpretation devices are available if needed. For those watching remotely, there are 3 channels available, one with the original audio, one with Spanish interpretation, and one with English interpretation, if necessary. You may find those channels via our website, www.oas.org. We will start with the opening statements from our officials, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Mr. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you and good evening. It has been 3 days of intense, but certainly positive engagements. Borrowing from our theme of building resilient, inclusive economies in the Americas, I'm satisfied in declaring that the 55th General Assembly of the OAS was a resounding success. A success from the point of view of the participation of member states. A success from the point of view of the takeaways from the exchanges and the recommitting of member states to the values of the OAS. I think Prime Minister Brown, when he spoke at the opening, would have laid a most beautiful, most excellent foundation for what transpired over the last 2 days. The many engagements, civil society, and other main actors, leaves me very comforted, buoyed even, about the future of our shared Americas. The discussions in Haiti and the commitments given to work through a process leading to a successful resolution of the issues in Haiti all leave me tonight feeling a sense of satisfaction over the exchanges we've had over the last few days. I would have said at the start of this assembly that I did not anticipate a talk shop, and already I'm feeling a difference. As I watched the many delegations interact, as I heard the pledges and commitments from the heads of delegations, which in effect represent the commitments and ambitions of the respective governments across the Americas, it tells me we're in a good place, having only now to act upon the many discussions and agreements arrived at. I'm also buoyed tonight by the fact that the OAS is in a good place, with a new Secretary General, renewed energy, dynamic focus and vision. The peoples of the Americas should feel justly proud in supporting the agenda led by our new SG, Albert Ramdin. Our meetings over the last 3 days, of course, had their own moments of bittersweet, what may call it. Because as we closed tonight, we said goodbye to 2 giants of the OAS. One, a fellow Antiguan in Paul Spencer, who served the organization for all of 32 years in varying capacities. That is certainly institutional knowledge that will go through the door by way of retirement. But it allows for new talents, new interests, new abilities to also come to the fore. And I'm sure that Paul, like the rest of the OAS leadership, would have been building capacities internally. And I know island governments, respective island governments, have also been ensuring that it's capacity building to replace and to augment and complement the efforts that officers like Paul have made over the last 32 years. We also say goodbye tonight, effectively, his last General Assembly, to the Deputy Secretary General, my good friend, Nestor Mendez. For the last 10 years, he was an anchor, a pillar in the operations of the OAS. And I think every single area of success and achievement of the OAS over the last 10 years would find his imprimatur somewhere written over it. And while a bitter moment to see him go, it was a sweet moment to hear the accolades showered on his service by delegations. The resolution on the mental health issues plaguing our Americas, as tabled by Antigua Barbuda and adopted by the General Assembly, also was another key takeaway from this very important General Assembly. There's no pretending that mental health issues present a real and present danger, a challenge to our hemisphere. And that this matter was given a front and center approach or attention, it speaks volumes of the desire, the ambition, the efforts not being spared in finding solutions to this scourge. It has implications for all of us. It has implications for the health of our population, implications for the finances of our respective countries, and certainly the capacities of our people to contribute to a robust development trajectory and agenda as outlined by our new SG. And so as we close this chapter of the OAS and its 55th General Assembly here in Antigua Barbuda, I will end this intervention like I started. Well, maybe words tweaked a bit, but saying the same thing. When I spoke to you last, I said, welcome to Antigua Barbuda. Tonight I say, thank you for coming to Antigua Barbuda. And I may go further and say, you're not allowed to leave Antigua Barbuda. I sense that desire to stay when in one round of elections we had to go 4 rounds of balloting. It was a very subtle message by the delegates of not wanting to leave. But on a more joyous and certainly a more somber note, I am pleased on behalf of Prime Minister Brown and the entire cabinet of ministers, the entire nation of Antigua and Barbuda, pleased to say that we were certainly happy to host you. And as we say goodbye, we are always at the ready to say welcome again. Secretary General, I wish you the very best in your tenure. I pray that the conduct of this your first GA as SG will continue throughout your journey as SG. Antigua and Barbuda certainly pledge our commitment and support to you and your very progressive and robust agenda. As a former foreign minister yourself, my telephone number should still be in your phone, and so I remain available to you at a call, at a WhatsApp, at an instance. To Deputy SG, as you take leave of the OAS desk, I wish you the very best on whatever you set out to do, to accomplish, to achieve as your next chapter of your life. I would not wish for you or speak of you the way I spoke of my compatriot Paul Spencer. Paul certainly is going into retirement, but I can't see you going into retirement. You have too much hair left to go into retirement. Retirement is for those without hair. But on a serious note, we thank you for your years of service. Your contributions have been meaningful, impactful, and as intimated by the many delegations and delegates who spoke tonight in recognition of your service, I join their sentiments in saying thanks. As a matter of fact, I adopt all of their comments as my own, as a way of expressing the gratitude that I share for your service. The OAS is now in a state of readiness for takeoff. The difference would be the commitment of its members. The hemispheric agenda of the Americas has to be a shared agenda. Antigua and Barbuda stand ready, as we demonstrated through our hosting of this very important meeting, to be a meaningful member, partner with the OAS and all the nations of the Americas. Until questions come, if any, I thank you again for being here in Antigua Barbuda for the 55th General Assembly.
Thanks very much, Mr. Minister. Mr. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Yeah, good evening to all, the media here present as well as online, virtual. Welcome. Apologies that it's a bit later than scheduled, but you know how these meetings go. Minister Chad Green, my colleague Ambassador Nestor Mendes. I want to give you a quick overview about what transpired here so that you have an idea about where we're heading. I think everybody underscores the fact that we live in different times, both at the global level as at the hemispheric level. Some call it interesting times, some call it challenging times, difficult times, but there is a movement, there is a dynamic in our hemisphere, and that dynamic is being looked at in a very positive way. I must say, part of that dynamic environment is some, what I call, some renovations within the Inter-American system. The first time in almost 80 years that a Secretary General comes from this region. We have held the ASG position for 40 years. Nestor is the last in a row. And apart from that, we have the General Assembly in a CARICOM country after almost 23 years. And then the first female ASG will take office next month. So these are what I call renovations. These are new developments which can only inspire all of us to look wider than what we are traditionally used to. So for me, this is almost like a new beginning for the hemisphere. We have to really express appreciation to Antigua and Barbuda, to the Prime Minister, to the Minister, Ambassador Sanders and his team, the team here, the volunteers, all of them for making it possible that since Monday, since we arrived for the formal meetings, up till today, Friday night, that everything went perfectly well. And even the weather was beautiful, but the organization of this conference was excellent, and I hope that we will continue to see that happening. So, Minister Chad Green, thank you very much for your leadership. You have steered the meeting professionally, with calm and in a very respectful manner. Not that there were many challenges as such, but that kind of leadership helps us move forward. As I said, over the past few days, member states, but also civil society, the private sector, the permanent observers, have touched on very substantive matters. And these substantive matters and the responses to those issues and the proposals they have made are going to be very helpful to chart an agenda going forward. I'm very pleased to hear the broad support which was expressed to my own vision, how I look at the hemisphere, how I look at the OAS and the role of the OAS. While we know that there is a degree of skepticism with regard to multilateralism and the institutions that represent multilateralism, I must say that all active members of the Organization of American States were present here. And the statements they have issued or have presented fit in that dynamic which we are experiencing now in this hemisphere. So I don't take any statement made as a negative one. It's an expression of a member state, it's an expression of a member country, the way they see it. But we have to not look at it from a negative perspective. So we're going to take those lessons and those suggestions to the heart and run with it and make sure that we develop an agenda going forward together. My own vision is grounded in two things, fundamentally. One, I'm absolutely in favor of more dialogue, more inclusiveness, more diplomacy when we solve problems, when we have issues. It doesn't make sense to not look at the opportunities to resolve matters. The second one is we need a strong institutional capability, the OAS and the Inter-American system, to deliver on those new directions. And we have presented our case, we have presented our vision. So I hope that as we go forward, we help build an hemisphere with a future unique in the world, where we see in many other regions, from Europe to Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, even in Southeast Asia, conflicts arising which threaten peace and security. We do not want that in this hemisphere. So we have a commitment to make sure that we work with each other and make sure that we deliver. Now, the topics which we were discussed here, the declaration on the Malvinas, the long-standing issue between Argentina and the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, the recognition of Pope Francis, advancing hemispheric development by endorsing the CD ministerial declarations and plans, the approval of the overall 2025 budget with the commitment to convene a special General Assembly in October this year to discuss some of the details, the side event which was organized but out of which a resolution came on mental health crisis. These are important decisions taken here. And of course the debate on the political environment in which we live in that has come up, including urgent matters with regard to Venezuela and Nicaragua, but also, and I must say, the solidarity expressed to our founding member, Haiti, has been very clear. Almost all countries, if not all, have pledged their support in finding solutions. So how are we going to go further? We will continue developing the agenda in terms of a shared common future, especially with the Summit of the Americas coming up in December. We hope that we can adopt a very concrete plan of improving prosperity, strengthening democracy, and protecting human rights in many of the countries. It's a long haul. I have expressed that the last time already. So we need to strengthen state institutions. We need to support countries in their capabilities to address security matters through the multinational security support mission, for instance, in Haiti. We must continue to provide electoral assistance and strengthening electoral processes so that we have functioning parliaments that will help democracy flourish and protect human rights. We have to create opportunities for the future, especially for the youth. These are some of the elements which are part of our agenda. So I want to close by saying this. Next year, we will be in Panama. And from now until next year, several modernization processes will take place in the OAS, simply because member states must be informed about the value of the OAS, the usefulness of the OAS, the impact the OAS is making. And we can only do that by showcasing all the work which is being done at the different secretariats. So we intend to do that. Next year, when we are in Panama City, we don't want a discussion about the usefulness of multilateralism anymore, or the skepticism with regard to multilateralism, or the usefulness and the efficiency and the relevance of the OAS as an institution. The OAS as an institution is a must. We must have such a body in the hemisphere where countries come together, small, large, rich, less rich, powerful or not. You need a multilateral platform to have countries discuss issues, because most of our issues are cross-border in nature. So we have a task which is immense. At the same time, we show the spirit of a positive approach, a forward-looking approach. And I'm convinced if we can showcase this by next year in Panama, and subsequently when we're going to celebrate in 2028 the 80th anniversary of the OAS in Colombia, then I believe everybody will be convinced that with the new agenda, with the forward-looking agenda, we can focus on building a future and prosperous Americas to the benefit of all the people in the Americas. I'll leave it at this, and I'll be open to taking some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And with that, we will open the floor for questions. Please state your name and the media outlet you represent and who you are addressing the question to.
Thank you. I'm Eduard Rivas from FNews, the Spanish news agency. My first question would be for the Secretary General. In his address, the U.S. representative, Mr. Landau, expressed doubts about the purpose of the OAS if it's unable to respond to the crisis in Venezuela and Haiti. This is what he said. Are you concerned that the U.S. could or might leave the organization, and what is your response? And my second question would be for the Foreign Minister. How would you assess the impact that hosting this assembly has had on your country, both politically and economically? Thank you.
I'll start with the question with regard to Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. As I said before, statements made by member states are important statements. We have to listen to those. I'm very pleased that countries feel free to speak open. And that is exactly what the OAS is about, to have a dialogue, to present your vision, views. I know that the statements sound harsh. I don't take it like that. As I said, I'm very optimistic and positive. So I'm not going to go in negatives. I'm not going to think even about what kind of conclusions could be drawn from it. I agree with member states that multilateralism has to deliver. If that is the undertone of what the Deputy Secretary of State wanted to convey, then I agree with him. Because countries pay a lot of money, certainly the United States, to make an organization work. But the organization can only work when it delivers on what member states would like it to deliver: in democracy, in human rights, in rule of law, independent judiciaries, a well-functioning society, a just and fair society. Not all countries are there as yet. We know that. So the call to work on Haiti is understood. We are working on Haiti already. So that is something which is a priority for us from the beginning. And with regard to Venezuela, we had several discussions here in Antigua and Barbuda on margins of the General Assembly about Venezuela and what we can do. When I said earlier that one of my founding principles is that if we want to help make change, improve democracy in a country, improve the electoral processes, we cannot say every single time is not good. What is happening there is not good. Statements alone will not improve situations. We need to work on it. And that means you have to be in touch with the realities, the political realities in such a country. And that is what we are working on. Most of the time that happens behind the scenes. So you won't see it. So I'm happy with the reminder which the United States provided. Let me say this as a last point on this. We have very good relationship with the United States administration currently. We have been in State Department in touch. We have had bilateral discussions right here with Christopher Landau. We spoke very frankly and openly about what the expectations are. We do the same with other officials within the Trump administration, President Trump's administration. So we see eye to eye to certain things. But we have made inroads as well on the Hill. My discussions with Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart with regard to the Appropriations Committee was a very positive one. You may have seen his own response to that conversation. We're going to work with every single member state to not only try to understand them, but to respond to what their concerns are. And we want to do that with every single country. We mentioned earlier very strongly that every country has different needs and different objectives. So we will speak with every single country and try to accommodate as best as we can. The United States is one of the founders of the Inter-American System in 1910 when the meeting was held on the leadership of the United States to make the OAS, out of which the OAS emanated. So I would say almost there is a moral obligation to guard that process. And we spoke about this also. So we have similar views on this with the United States. So that's my response. I'm pleased when member states speak their mind and give us guidance on where they see the OAS going. Thank you.
I think your question was the political and economic benefits of hosting to Antigua Barbuda. I'll answer you this way. We do not necessarily count a cost in dollars and cents, even though I know that the number of delegates would have had an impact on our tourism sector. We look at this in terms of what it does in relation to our contribution to the development of peace, democracy, and justice in the Americas. That's our first focus. In terms of the benefits to our economy and to our people, 2,000 plus delegates have certainly brought added value to our economy. And the name Antigua Barbuda is now even more known across the region and across the world by virtue of us hosting this event. And so we make these investments, if you may call it that, not for the short-term benefits, but for the medium to long-term benefits. But I think above all, our major takeaway, our major satisfaction comes from the fact that here in St. John's, Antigua, this little piece of rock, we were able to make a significant contribution to the stability of our region, the issues of peace and democracy, which are so quintessentially important, especially in today's geopolitical context. So again, we don't count it in dollars and cents. Those will help. I'm sure that somewhere after today, we will get a report from the Ministry of Finance about the typical injections into the economy. But that was never our overriding concern or interest.
Next question, there in the back. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, this is Robert Emmanuel from Antigua Observer. My first question is to Secretary General Ramdin. During Antigua Barbuda's presentation during the OAS, it was laid out that, as well as other presentations from other member states, it was laid out the realities of the organization's fiscal realities. Ambassador Ronald Sanders noted that you will inherit an annual budget of barely $90 million when at least $120 million is needed for effective function of the OAS. In Costa Rica, the Costa Rica's delegation called for a channeling of the scarce resources of the OAS towards more shared priorities rather than spreading them out across different initiatives. As my previous colleague would have said, the United States also talked about, making the OAS more effective, more efficient, and being more results focused rather than process focused. Now, Antigua and Barbuda, for its part, has laid out 3 specific reforms: adopting a realistic budget, reforming the quota system with penalties for non-payment, and aligning governance and the budget with the reality of having 32 active members than the 34 with Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua being effectively non-members at this point. Firstly, what conversations have you had? Well, what conversations have you had over the past 3 days with member states over developing that comprehensive strategy to implement any of these reforms talked about? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. You have followed it closely, I see. I want to say that we have very close attention to our budgetary situation. The organization is very cost effective. An organization with approximately 450 staff members and another 400 consultants working with a budget of somewhat more than 90 million US dollars is very cost effective. And then on top of that, all the programs which we carry out. Of course, we do have specific funds as well, which are donations from and grants from member states, but also from the permanent observers. So there is no doubt in my mind that we have to convince member states at some point, not now. We have to showcase the OAS. We have to demonstrate the value of the OAS to the member states. It would not be good for me to go and ask member states or try to convince member states now to say, we need more money. We need more money. It is true. Approximately 120 million would be a normal figure for such an organization. In that sense, the OAS, as a regional organization, one of the 5 regional organizations of the world, is a pretty, with a low budget organization. If we want to really do everything what we are expected to do, we will need more money. I made that point during my presentation as well. But we're going to do a couple of things before that. First of all, showcase the OAS, tell the story from the OAS, what we're doing so that the value of the OAS is known. And out of that valuation, that monetary evaluation, we will note that most of the countries, I suspect around 60% of the countries, in monetary terms, earn at least 5 to 10 times more out of the OAS than they contribute to the OAS. And we're going to make sure that that is clear in terms of projects, in terms of scholarships, in terms of political support, electoral assistance. One electoral assistance to a member state approximately costs 250,000 US. That is already 5 times more than some countries pay into the OAS. So there is a value. There is good value out of the OAS. But beyond that, we will also work towards increasing funds in terms of the specific funds, which are the donations and the grants. We are working with more permanent observers to broaden their scope of work in a different way. We want to look at multi-year planning possibilities. That means more money has to come in and work not so much on a project basis, but much more on a program basis for 2 or 3 years. Some of the countries are already willing to look at that approach. We would like, and we're going to, mobilize the private sector in the hemisphere. The private sector has a responsibility to maintain high degrees of commitment to democracy, democratic governance, human rights, etc. It's in their interest, It's not philanthropy. It's not corporate social responsibility. They need an environment which is a political stable climate, with investment securities and so on. More trade, more investment in the hemisphere will create a better environment for the private sector to do business. So it is logical that they have an interest to also contribute in that way. And then the last point is that we will improve efficiencies within the organization, which will save cost, deliver better, more targeted on what member states want. And I have asked the member states to also look at their own efficiency in terms of the mandates which need to be executed. We need less mandates with secured funding for execution. We have approximately 600 mandates, and many of them are not being executed. So that's a political function, and we will discuss this with the political bodies as well. So there are many initiatives already on the way to streamline the OAS from within. And that process will continue for another couple of months.
Thank you. If there are any more questions in the room, we have a couple of questions that we have received. The first one is for the minister. It's actually 3 questions. Garfield Burford from ABS TV is asking your view, Mr. Minister, on the threats to the multilateral order, and has the OAS been effectively responding to this challenge? The second one asks your view on the speech by the Deputy Secretary of State, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, yesterday in the plenary. And thirdly, has this General Assembly advanced discussions on the crucial issues facing the most vulnerable states, including Antigua and Barbuda, including climate change and trade challenges?
All right, thank you for the 3-part question. The issue of the multilateral system and whether the OAS is effectively addressing this. This is not a Nescafe issue. It's an issue that requires ongoing dialogue, ongoing work. And so I would say that within the context of the 55th Assembly, issues pertaining to the multilateral system were addressed. The very fact that we're here addressing the hemispheric issues is a commitment that we share towards the resolution or the effective development of the multilateral system, which we must admit is under some pressure at the moment. What we came away with from the Assembly is a shared commitment to not resile away from, but certainly redouble our efforts in the maintenance of this multilateral system, which is the only system that as small nations especially, we allowed a voice in global affairs. The issue of the statement made by the Deputy U.S. Official, it did cause some ripples across the membership, as it was subject to wide and varied interpretation. I think there had been a degree of bilateral conversations with the member states of the OAS. The U.S.'s own interest in serving at the hemispheric level makes it clear that their ambition, their interest is to preserve the integrity of the OAS. I will not get into the issues that are germane to the administration of the OAS. I will leave these to the 2 gentlemen on my left and right. They're the ones who will have to administer budgetary allocations and who will feel the strains and pressures when these allocations are not forthcoming. But I never sensed anywhere in the U.S. statement a desire to withdraw, to cripple, or to cause any injury to the OAS. If we were to honestly evaluate the position, it begs the question, and one we should frontally answer: are we doing enough? The hemisphere has challenges, and for the U.S. to raise those questions is a fair question, And if members have questions about the US's role in the OAS and in the hemisphere in the world, members also, within the context of an organization that encourages wide and varying discussions, should pose those questions. And if members interpret the views of the US or the expressions made by the US official with jaundiced positions, hey, raise them. And I think the US themselves might have had some sense of consternation on the part of some members, to the extent that there has been, I am aware of that, bilateral discussions, giving value to the comments, and certainly putting to ease some of the interpretations. You know, the old saying that history precedes us, and so if one views the US actions or US comments in a certain light, you can't fault one for seeing things through one's lenses. If I borrowed your glasses, I would not see what I'm seeing in this room tonight. And so each of us has the right to our lenses and our interpretations and understanding. But again, I want to commend our Secretary General and this new ethos of internal renewal in the OAS that allows for dialogue. It is a conversation that allows us to understand each other, and an ongoing conversation allows us to build the Americas together. So I think that the US's position is fully understood, albeit after this original or initial pronouncement. And I have every confidence, based on the very fact that the US today accepted or put a candidate into the election process, accepted the election of that candidate to office. That in itself, to me, is testament of their decision or position with respect to the value of the OAS to our hemisphere. The US is a very critical and significant member of the OAS. And so, again, I would leave all the other issues peripheral to those who have the responsibility to do the administrative day-to-day functions. But I remain confident that the US will remain a significant player within the operations of the OAS. The other question had to do with the crucial and critical issues affecting the Americas. I think this assembly did just that. The examination of the mental health challenges that face our region is perhaps a most critical, singularly most critical issue affecting, because if we talk of productivity, mental health affects productivity in our region. If we talk about just the general health of our region, we have enough mental health issues that when carefully examined and honestly accepted, represent a significant challenge to us as a people. Within the context of our discussions, yes, there are other issues that are dealt with. Haiti, another major issue affecting the region. But, you know, in every meeting, there's always be and can always be issues that can be raised. But let's not forget we had 3 days. And so we had to prioritize the issues that we would deal with at this very important meeting. Don't forget also that there are bilateral meetings that took place with the Secretary General, his team, OAS, member states, that would not necessarily be brought to public attention, which would have focused on some of the bilateral challenges that countries face. But if you ask me again, and having been asked rather the question, I am satisfied that we did tackle critical issues in this General Assembly. I will end like I started. This is not a Nescafe moment. This requires constant attention. And here's where the trust reposed in the Secretary General and his team will have to, tomorrow and the day after, the week after, the month after, continue to be in evidence as we shore up the security issues, the democracy issues, and certainly the prosperity issues of our continent.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We have a question from Natalia Cabrera, France 24, and Eric Martin, Bloomberg. It's essentially the same question. What do you see as it's for the Secretary General, what do you see as the next steps towards addressing the issues of violence and insecurity in Haiti?
Haiti's concern are a hemispheric concern, are a concern for all member states. The pillars of the OAS, democracy, human rights, sustainable development, security, all of these things play out in Haiti in a crisis form. So it would be wrong if the Organization of American States would not be actively involved in improving and helping to improve the situation in the Republic of Haiti. As a founding member, one of the 2 founding members of the organization in the Caribbean. So what we intend to do and what we have started doing since a couple of weeks is to develop a roadmap, a comprehensive, holistic roadmap which includes security, humanitarian assistance, political dialogue, election, so that we can have a legitimate parliament and a legitimate government in place, as well as working on rebuilding the economy. These 5 pillars we don't do alone. We work with stakeholders from the United States, France, Canada, bilaterally speaking, to multilateral agencies like the Inter-American Development Bank, the United Nations. We had very positive conversations today with the United Nations representative, after we had spoken earlier with Secretary General Guterres. In the coming days, some developments will take place with regard to the continued support to the MSS mission. In our plan, we want to be very clear about the aspects that we need to take on board and also the requirements to address them. And based on that, there will be kind of a menu out of which member states and international partners can say, I can help you here or I can help you there. There is a rule, specific rule for CARICOM, as Haiti is a member of the Caribbean community, but also part of this region, the Caribbean region. The historical significance of Haiti and the impact it has had on decolonization, or if you wish, the independence movement in the Americas, not only the English-speaking independence movement, but certainly also the Spanish. The historical record is there, so there is a moral obligation to work on Haiti and making sure that we assist in that process. Of course, this all will need to take place under leadership with ownership from the Haitian authorities. There's a lot of work to be done. It won't be done in a couple of years. It will take time. But we want to start this process and continue with that with full support of international partners and international organizations. And I see the commitment to Haiti in terms of the support they want to provide growing. Of course, they're waiting on the plan. That plan will be ready by mid-July, and we'll present it to several of our partners in the hemisphere and beyond. I hope that it will be a starting point, because we have tried many occasions. It will be a starting point together with the Haitian political leadership to have a sustainable, that means a long-term path to stability and economic development in Haiti, with governance doing what it is expected to do, not only be functioning under crisis, constant crisis, but also to deliver on the social and economic goods for the society. I'm optimistic about the prospects of mobilizing that support, and I'm optimistic also about the understanding in Haiti itself that political renewal is essential to make progress in Haiti, so that we don't need to continuously repeat what has happened over the past 25 years. So Haiti was certainly a cross-cutting issue here during the General Assembly.
Thank you. And one question from Eric Martin, Bloomberg, for you, Secretary General. What is your reaction to the elections today that took place for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights?
Normally, you would hear silence from me because it's a matter for member states. The Secretary General has nothing to do with electoral processes. It is for member states. So if I would be silent, then there will be no explanation, so I'll speak. It is important to see the commitment of member states to, as Minister said, also countries who have a skeptical outlook on multilateralism to have their candidates elected. So all I can do here is wish them all the very best, and I hope that the capacities they bring to the table will be used to improve systems, to make human rights better in the Americas, and I congratulate them with their elections. It's not done as yet for the Inter-American human rights system. There is some follow-up to do in Washington, but the fact that we had to go through different ballots, different rounds of election, and still not have finished, indicates how much is at stake and how much countries are committed to make sure that there is a representation of their country in such a body. So that's my response. I think it has proven that the Inter-American system of human rights is alive and very functional, very relevant to member states.
Thank you. And if we have one more question in the back. Thank you.
Yes. My final question is to the Assistant Secretary, Nestor Mendez. Well, this press conference and this General Assembly is effectively your last act as Assistant Secretary General. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole list of congratulations that you would have received at the closing session because my memory is good, but it's not that good. But regardless, with your successor expected to take over in the next 2 weeks, well, yes, 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks. As you reflect back on your work over the last decade, what would you say is your greatest achievement within this organization? And what is your message to your successor, Ambassador Laura Hill, as she works with this OAS Secretary General to make the OAS itself have more of a presence in the Americas and particularly in the Caribbean region? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Today was a day full of emotions for me. It was indeed, it's not my final, my last day in office will be on July the 11th, and my formal farewell from the organization will be on the 9th of July in a special session of the Permanent Council at headquarters. So I still have a couple more weeks to, I am reminding myself not to relax because the final days are usually the tougher ones when you have to hand over everything. There's a complicated offboarding process. But anyway, that's administrative. It's difficult for me to pinpoint a specific big accomplishment. I can tell you a lot of things we did, big things we did. One of them in particular, and we're still working on it, is introducing more technology, using state-of-the-art technology to make more efficient the processes within the OAS. Certainly, we're utilizing artificial intelligence to make more efficient the preparation of minutes of the political bodies, which is a costly undertaking that takes long. But if you apply technology that's available, then it makes things more efficient. And it's keeping up with the times. Organizations sometimes take long to change, but it's not impossible. And so that has started. It is well underway. I'm hopeful that by the time I leave on the 11th of July, we would have accomplished a lot in that direction. Certainly, the modernization and using artificial intelligence again to manage document flows and production of documents, all of that is there. We also try to focus on concrete things, you know, giving more visibility to vulnerable populations. Under my term, certainly my team, we instituted the Inter-American Week for People of African Descent and the Inter-American Week for Indigenous Peoples. These are issues that are cross-cutting to the organization, but did not have a single place, a single platform to be given visibility at a political level. They were too dispersed, and what we did is we worked with member states to make it part of the institutional calendar. Those two particular events in the institutional calendar are quite successful, and I'm hoping that they will continue to do so. In the middle of our term, of my term, the 10-year term, we had the COVID-19 pandemic. And it seems like it was a long time ago, but it was not. 3 years ago, we were just trying to get back to normal. And that shock to our lives, to the institution, to the world, was a challenge that we had to navigate. My office was responsible for managing the migration into the virtual world of the entire OAS political apparatus. We needed to ensure business continuity. That we needed to innovate systems, innovate procedures. Let me give you a very simple example. In the first days of the lockdown, we had to meet virtually to determine whether or not a virtual meeting of the Permanent Council was legal or not. Could we still make decisions as an institution if we were meeting and it had no validity? Those things, you don't think about it until you're faced with it. So that migration, that ensuring business continuity, that making sure that our organization, which was needed more than ever as a place of convergence, as a place to manage cooperation, to work with PAHO, to work with the IDB, to work with countries in putting them together and getting information to them about accessing, sourcing and accessing vaccines. All of those things were happening simultaneously while ensuring that our people were safe. So that was, I think it was quite an accomplishment that our organization was the first multilateral, certainly in Washington, D.C., that was able to meet in what was, for all intents and purposes, a normal session, interpretation in 4 languages. Everybody sitting in their homes, the ambassadors learning to use, many of them learning to use computers, and making sure that the organization did not stop. We did that. So, but there are many other examples if we want to trace back. So it's tough for me to say this was the biggest thing, There were a lot of things along the way, of which I am proud. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we had the opportunity to do it. And I can tell you, I still have right now, for a few days, an excellent team working with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Mendez. And seeing there's no further questions, thank you to our officials. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for the hospitality. And this concludes the press conference. Thank you.